Boneddigion a Boneddigesau. Croeso cynnes iawn i'r daith Llandudno a Trillo yn Rhos gyda City Sightseeing. Hello and welcome aboard the City Sightseeing tour of Llandudno and Rhos-on-Sea. Your ticket is valid for up to 24 hours. Please check with your driver for the times of the tours today and the time of the last complete tour. City Sightseeing operates tours around the world. Remember to hold on to your ticket because it will entitle you to a discount off venues and attractions across the town as well as your next City Sightseeing tour. Please remain seated whilst the bus is moving and keep a watch out for any overhanging trees and branches. As you look down the promenade ahead of us today, it is hard to imagine that just over 170 years ago, it was all fields with the occasional fisherman's cottage. One of the first houses along the promenade to our right, Osborne House, was built in 1851 and was opened as a boarding school. It was 3 years later that the St George's Hotel was built, starting the town's development as a seaside resort. As we set off, we shall turn left, taking us along Mostyn Street, passing the Mad Hatter's Pocket Watch on the left. This is our main shopping street, named after the Mostyn family who still own a majority of the land on which the resort still stands. They have ensured that the town grew in an orderly fashion and have maintained the highest of standards to this day, helping to ensure the town retains its elegance and grace. Coming up on our right is Peacock's, the old majestic ballroom, and you can still walk up the sweeping staircase and look down on the former dance floor below. Visitors were entertained with a 6-piece orchestra that played during morning coffee and again in the evenings at dance. To the left is Claire's department store, home to an original 1920s cage lift that is still in use today. Again, on our left, we have the original Marks and Spencer store, dating to the early 1950s. As its popularity grew, Llandudno flourished, and the store has now, after 80 years of trading, relocated less than a mile away to the new purpose-built store on Mostyn Broadway with plenty of free car parking. The old store has now been acquired by the Mostyn estate, and plans are in place to repurpose this town centre store to ensure the continued prosperity of the resort. Coming up on our right is Holy Trinity Church, opened in 1874 to accommodate the growing number of visitors to the area. The tower was added 8 years later, complete with 8 bells which can be heard on Friday evenings for the bell ringing practice. Also on Sundays calling parishioners and visitors alike to morning song. The area to the right is officially named Northwestern Gardens, although it's locally known as Bog Island due to its underground toilets, which date back to the early 1920s. The Premier Inn to our right, a brand new construction, was built to resemble the architectural style of the 1920s. The original Northwestern Hotel sadly lost its battle with the elements and was in need of a major restoration. Mostyn Estate started the work, but when it became apparent that the structure was beyond economical repair, they demolished the original building and built a modern replica identical in almost every detail. Coming up shortly is our first stop at Llandudno coach station. The resort coach station stands on land originally occupied by one of the Promenade Hotel's tennis courts. Towards the back there is a small metal building, a former church, now known as the True Cafe, a social enterprise rehabilitating recovering addicts. On our left, we see the Broadway Boulevard, one of the town's nightclubs. You can still see its original name, the Grand Theatre, written on the side. Opened in 1901, it seated 1,100 people over 3 tiers. It was closed as a theatre in 1980, but still has large parts of the original interior intact. As we make our way along the promenade, you can't help but notice ahead of us to the right the dome of the Washington Hotel. Its designer, A.S. Hewitt, was also responsible for Claire's department store and the Palladium Theatre in town. This 1925 building replaced the original hotel, which was located several feet closer to the beach, allegedly spoiling the sweep of the bay. As a consequence, it was demolished and rebuilt, brick by brick, in its current location. The hotel's original owner received one of the country's earliest speeding fines in 1899, when he was charged with furiously driving his motor car with an estimated speed of 20 miles per hour. Our next stop, coming up shortly, is for the Lifeboat Station and Paddling Pool. Ahead you can see Llandudno Lifeboat Station and Visitor Centre. Its Shannon class all-weather and D-class inshore lifeboats are housed in a modern boathouse completed in 2017. The town's original station, opened in 1861, was the only lifeboat station in Britain not located on the water's edge. It was in fact situated in the middle of the town on Lloyd Street, next to what now is the Penrhyn Distillery. The original location was selected because Llandudno is located on a strip of land with a beach either side, the north shore, where we are now, and the west shore. Thus, the lifeboat could be towed to either beach by a string of horses, which were replaced in 1899 due to the high cost of their hire and delay in obtaining them. The paddling pool is in fact the largest in Wales and has a maximum depth of 2 feet, incorporating a pool cafe, picnic tables and amenities. Elegant Llandudno Bay is bordered by 2 huge lumps of Carboniferous limestone, a hard sedimentary rock made largely of calcium carbonate, the 680-foot Great Orme behind us, and the 463-foot Little Orme ahead of us. There is evidence of life on the Ormes, going back at least 5,500 years. The copper mines, which were uncovered in 1987 during a scheme to landscape an area of the Great Hall, represent one of the most astounding archaeological discoveries of recent times. Also discovered on the Little Orme, alongside a small hoard of Iron Age metalwork, was a female skeleton who has been named Blodwen, meaning white flower. She can still be seen in the Llandudno Museum on Glovaith Street. Carbon dating suggests that she died around 3510 BC, aged between 54 and 63, was 5 feet tall, and she was accustomed to carrying heavy loads, both on her head and in her arms. Again here on the Little Orme, and much later in history, in 1586, the first printing press in Wales was operating in secrecy. It was printing a book for those that practiced Roman Catholicism, which was unlawful during the reign of Elizabeth I. One of Lord Mostyn's men discovered 12 priests at work with the press, and they, together with the press, disappeared overnight, probably by sea. Coming up shortly is for Penrhyn Bay, and from here there is a lovely walk through the houses to the old limestone quarries and Angel Bay, where you will find an abundance of grey seals. They descend on Angel Bay in large numbers with their pups and haul themselves out of the water to breed, to molt, or simply just to rest. When they are on the beach, it is important not to attempt to descend to the beach, but simply observe them from above. If you wish to visit the bay, it is a good 15-minute walk from the stop both ways. We are now in Penrhyn Bay, originally a small farming community. When people started quarrying limestone on the Little Orme in the 1850s, the population grew, and so too did the housing stock. The quarry eventually closed in 1936, leaving room for this rather nice housing development to our left. The seafront houses have now been protected from the elements by these rather substantial sea defence works down to our left. the groins making this tranquil bay a popular spot for wild swimming, paddleboarders and canoeists. Has been created on what was once the bed of the Conwy estuary as we now know it. It was the landing site of the first airplane to land in Wales. The pilot was flying from Blackpool to Holyhead, but the weather curtailed his journey and he made an emergency landing on this uncharacteristically flat land. Out to sea, there are 160 wind turbines which generate clean, sustainable electricity that keeps our light on at night. This wind farm is called Wind to Moor, meaning sea wind. It is the 5th largest offshore wind farm in the world and soon to be joined by a new array of turbines called Awel Moor, which will add to our sustainable energy production. Each turbine stands approximately 150 meters above the sea level and lies 7 to 9 miles out to sea and generates enough electricity for 400,000 homes each year. Our next stop is for Saint Trillo's church. It is here that the 6th century missionary Saint Trillo set up home near the seafront and next to a natural spring. Today you can visit the 16th century church built on the same site, which is claimed to be the smallest church in Britain. It measures 11 foot by 8 foot and its walls are 2 feet thick. There is a fresh water well under the altar. If you get off here to visit the church, it is only a short walk along the promenade to the centre of Rhos. Our bus stop there is on the promenade, opposite the Cayley Public House. On our right, we find the Rhos-on-Sea Public House. There was once an abbey on this site, where today you can play mini golf and obtain refreshments. On presentation of your city sightseeing ticket at the Rhos-on-Sea, you will receive a discount of both golf and refreshments. Legend has it that the building is haunted by a monk wearing a brown habit and white cloak. So watch out. We are now reaching our stop for Rhos-on-Sea, and if you are leaving us here, this is also the stop for the return journey to Llandudno. Our buses leave here every 60 minutes. Please check with the driver for the times of the last bus.
We can have a bowl about and see what's about.
All right.
Yeah. See you later.
Yeah, that works.
If you look out ahead of the bus and to the left, you cannot help but notice our magnificent new beach. The level of the shoreline has been raised significantly over the past 12 months, using approximately 1 million tons of sand dredged from the Liverpool Bay and deposited here. This coastal defence work has cost approximately £14 million and will ensure that our promenade is maintained intact, thereby preserving the North Wales Expressway, or A55, along with the North Wales Coast Railway and the town of Penrhyn Bay itself from constant impact of coastal erosion. As we leave the promenade, the green area below us is called the Cayley Embankment, named after the Cayley family who were prominent local landowners. Their ancestor, Sir George Cayley, is the father of aviation and designed a practical flying machine 50 years before the Wright brothers. The old building on our right is called the Mount Stewart Hotel. During the Second World War, when much of the UK civil service was forced to relocate around the country, this hotel was the headquarters of the UK Wheat Commission. From here, officials ensured that the British and Commonwealth Armed Forces were kept supplied with wheat, oats and other grain. Ahead of us we are about to turn right at a roundabout which, despite having 6 exits, is called 5 ways. It was assumed that you wouldn't be going back the way you just came, so only had 5 ways to go. We are now travelling along Brompton Avenue. Watch out for the trees and branches, which grow very quickly. Before the A55 expressway was opened in 1985, this was the main road used by visitors and local alike, travelling from the east to Llandudno. Most of the houses along this stretch are detached and individually designed. Behind these houses to our left, we get glimpses towards a prominent hill called Bryn Penrhyn, where you can find the ruins of a 13th century manor house. There was also a limestone quarry here, and as we approached the traffic lights and crossroads ahead of us, there were once rail tracks used to convey the limestone to the jetty at Rhos-on-Sea to be taken away. Coming up shortly on our left is Hickory's, today an American smokehouse, which was once a popular coaching inn called the Ship Hotel, originally built in 1736. The current building was constructed in 1874, and you can see where the stables used to be on the left-hand side of the building. The church coming up on our right has been in existence since the 13th century. The tower was used as a watchtower looking out to sea for enemy ships, and is in sight of another watchtower in the Conwy. An iron basket containing combustible flares was stored here to signal an imminent enemy invasion. It is also the resting place of a local man, Harold Lowe, who first went to sea as a cabin boy, aged 14. He was the 5th officer on board the Titanic, and one of just 4 officers to survive the disaster. He was the only officer to go back to the shipwreck to search for survivors. He died in 1944. As we pass the golf club on our right, you can see how flat the land is as it stretches back towards Snowdonia to our left and towards the seawall to our right. Before the last ice age, this is where the River Conwy flowed into the sea. Nowadays, it is the Afon Ganol and was the border between the old counties of Denbighshire and Caernarfonshire and the busy resort towns of Penrhyn Bay and Llandudno. It was from here in 1170 that little known but great transatlantic journey is believed to have departed. Welsh folklore tells of Owain ap Gwynedd Madoc, son of Owain, Prince of Gwynedd, who set sail from these parts and discovered the Americas 322 years before Columbus. He returned a few years later to tell of his discovery of new land. He then collected a fleet of 10 ships filled with colonists and never returned. It wasn't until the early 1830s that the Prince Maximilian of Wied discovered traces of the Welsh language in the strange dialect spoken by the pale-skinned Mandan Indians in what is now known as North Dakota. We are now back in Penrhyn Bay, for many years the home of William Roach, best known for playing Ken Barlow in the ITV soap opera Coronation Street. As we now start the slow climb up Penrhyn Hill and back over the Little Orme, to our left we have the Penrhyn Old Hall. It is thought that this is the site of an 8th century royal palace. Nowadays, it is a pub and restaurant, although its southwest wing dates back to the 16th century. It hosts paranormal and ghost hunting events throughout the year, as many ghosts reportedly can be found here, including a girl murdered by her sisters, a soldier, and a boy who sprinkles salt on the tables. Below to our left, we have Batty's Nurseries, the sign for which in the 1980s often had the name Nora added in front of its name. Ghosts were not expected of that activity. As we descend the little orme back towards Llandudno, you get a magnificent view of the sweeping bay lined by the tastefully decorated hotels along with elegant Victorian promenade. The sunset from here can be magical as the sun disappears behind the great orme ahead of us. The Premier Inn here on our left was originally a gentleman's retreat where in the grounds in 1907 a wooden box was discovered which contained 500 Roman coins dated from 287 to 293 AD. The Art Deco house on the right was originally completed in 1936 at the cost of £35,000 for Birmingham cake millionaire Harry Scribbins. Unfortunately, he died before it was completed, and his widow Ada disliked it so much she sold it for £5,000 at a dinner party at the St George's Hotel to a Uttoxeter concrete manufacturer. More latterly, it was known as Condover House and was a convalescent centre belonging to the British Shoe Corporation where employees were able to come to Llandudno to take the air to aid their recovery. It was last sold in 2012 for £650,000 and is now a private home. Over to our left, you can see a raised pathway through the green fields. This was the original route of the Llandudno and Penrhyn Bay Electric Railway, which opened in 1908. It carried locals and visitors alike between the bustling seaside resorts of Penrhyn Bay, Rhos-on-Sea and Llandudno. It was severely damaged by storms in 1952 and eventually closed in 1956. On our left, we find Venue Cymru, a 1,500-seat theatre, along with a conference centre with arena attached. When first opened, it had one of the largest stages in the country. In April 2020, during the pandemic, it was converted into an emergency NVIS hospital, but was never used for that purpose, although it was instrumental in the initial vaccine rollout phases. The promenade on our right took 2 years to build and was completed in 1878. It runs for almost 2 miles from the Great Orme towards the Little Orme. When created, the Victorians also erected wooden groins out to sea, which trapped sand on the shoreline, and for over a century, Llandudno enjoyed a beautiful sandy north shore. But as the groins fell into disrepair, and the local residents objected to the unsightly structures being replaced, sand was slowly washed away along the coast. The current rocks were laid on the shoreline as a sea defence mechanism, and while somewhat unpleasant to sit and walk on, they are very efficient at protecting the promenade and town behind from winter storms. Whilst many of our promenade hotels are listed buildings, so too is the postbox on our left, outside the Queen's Hotel. This is an extremely rare surviving hexagonal penfold box, installed in 1865. For many years, it was not permitted for ladies and gentlemen to bathe on the same stretch of beach, and bathing huts were wheeled down to the sea. Gentlemen were only permitted to bathe between the Hydro and Imperial hotels, whilst ladies were restricted to the area between the Queen's and the St. George's hotels. How times have changed. As we return to our starting point, we enjoy one last view of Llandudno's Victorian Pier, the longest in Wales at 2,295 feet in length and one of the finest in the United Kingdom, and was recently featured in the hit ITV television series The Pier. If you are leaving us here, please take a moment to check all around you to ensure you have all your belongings with you. We hope you enjoyed your ride on the Horse Rover. Please remember to hold on to your ticket, as this will entitle you to a 10% discount on any future tours with City Sightseeing worldwide.